So right. Yep. Where did that go? Yeah. So now we're doing chapter 8, right? The cripps mission and quit India movement. All right. So any doubts with the previous chapter, chapter 7? All right, cool. Right. So we last time we covered from around the civil disobedience movement and its ending. So the Cripps mission and the Quit India movement are the last push towards the achieving independence in India's history. This covers the period from 1940 to 1947, all right, till we got independence. So one thing to know is there were a lot of factors that played part over here. One was, can you think of any of the factors? That were important factors, external factors to consider during the independence movement throughout the 40s. Very good. There was the threat of partition that was happening then. It can be a global event also that had an impact on India. Exactly. World War II was a very big factor that played a part in the independence of India. Alright, so shall we start? Yeah, so like we read in the previous chapter, there were three roundtable conferences held in London, and the third one was from 17th of November to 24th of December 1932. Out of these three, how many did the Congress attend? Very good. Brilliant. Yes. So only the second one was attended by the Congress. And after this conference, the government, that is the British government, drew up a set of proposals for the reform of the Indian government. This led to the Government of India Act passing, which received the royal assent on the 4th of August 1935. So just like in India, for an act to become law, the president has to sign on it. In Britain, the head of state is the queen or the king over there. So for a law to come into force, it has to be signed and receive royal assent. And this is what happened on the 4th of August 1935. So the Act of 1935, the Government of India Act of 1935, provided for the creation of an All India Federation consisting of 11 British provinces and such of the princely states that had acceded to the federation. So all the British provinces would be included in this, along with princely states which acceded to the federation, that joined the federation. Federal provisions of the act were never put into operation. However, this act never came into operation. The federal act, that is, states joining together and all that. That only happened after 1947. The most significant aspect of the act was the provision for provincial autonomy. That is, the provinces received certain autonomy from the central government, which is what like the state governments have today. As a result of elections held in 1937, before that, diarchy was replaced by a system of responsible government in the province. So the system of diarchy was abolished, and responsible government was introduced in the provinces. Now, the elections of 1937 were the first elections held under this act, and the Congress formed ministries in six provinces, namely UP, Bihar, Orissa, now called Odisha, central provinces, which is in basically Madhya Pradesh, and central India, Madras, which is Tamil Nadu and other parts of South India, and Bombay, which is a province of Maharashtra and Gujarat. Later, Congress ministries were formed in Assam and the Northwest Frontier Province, which is what modern day Pakistan, a lot of modern day Pakistan. And in Bengal, a non-Congress coalition ministry under Fazl ul Haq was formed, and in Punjab, the Unionist Party took office under Sir Sikandar Hayat Khan. And in Sindh, the situation remained fluid because of the multiplicity of parties. Alright? So, out of the 11 provinces, 6 of them, the Congress formed governments. Hello? Hello? Yeah, my video is gone off. Acha, one second. So, where did you stop, like, seeing from? So, yeah, anyway, basically, so out of 11 provinces, six provinces, the Congress formed the government. In Bengal, it was formed by, the Muslim League and other coalitions. In Punjab, some of the regional parties along with the Muslim League formed the government. And in sorry, and in the northwest, sorry, in Sindh, yes, in Sindh there was a lot of fluid situation because the parliament was hung. That is, no single party had a majority, and it kept on changing, like alliances and all. So, what were the reasons? So, any doubts in the previous topic? Hello, Atharva? Yeah, the Government of India Act 9. Yeah, yeah, tell me, sorry. Yeah, tell me. No, it was followed. Only certain provisions of it were not followed. Right? Like the concept of federalism was not followed. Apart from it, the elections and all were contested. The system of diarchy was thrown out and all that. Okay. Yeah. So the next one is the reasons for and events leading to the Quit India movement. So World War II, as we mentioned earlier, was a very important factor. So it broke out in September of 1939 and it began with Germany's invasion of Poland. On the 3rd of September, Britain and France declared war on Germany. Alright, so this kick-started World War II. The failure of the cripps mission in 1942 brought around a marked change in the attitude of Congress leaders. They were, it's breaking. One second. Hello, am I audible now? Much clearer? All right. So, the failure of the cripps mission in 1942 brought around a marked change in the attitude of Congress leaders. They had been until now very reluctant to launch a mass movement during the war, but now they were convinced that British rule must end immediately. So the events of leading to the Quit India movement of 1942 need a detailed account. So what all led to the Quit India movement? All right. Any doubts? Atal, any doubts? All right. So the next one is the resignation of Congress ministries. Resignation of a ministry means okay, okay. Yeah, so resignation of a ministry means they resign from government. So many Congress ministries resigned on the war issue. Haha. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That is fine. So the Congress ministries resigned on the war issue because they had the objection that the British government had involved India in the war without consulting the central legislature and the provincial governments. The Congress ministries resigned towards the end of October 1939, where World War II had already kick-started. And the Muslim League rejoiced to see the fall of the Congress ministries because Mr. Jinnah, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, by now had come to look upon the Congress as enemy number one because they believed that Congress was the biggest enemy of the Muslims in India. And uh, the Muslim League promised all help in the war efforts on the condition that no constitutional scheme would be finalized without its approval. So, while the Congress was resigning and all, the Muslim League, saw this as an opportunity to strengthen themselves. The next one is the August offer of 1940. And by the time the war in Europe had worsened, right? Like Germany was steamrolling throughout Europe and there was nothing. France had already was on the, I think France by 1940 was already occupied and Britain was the sole last standing power in Europe that could face the Axis. And therefore an attempt in India was made to break the political deadlock. Uh, this is again gone, no? One second. Yeah. So, there was an attempt made to break the political deadlock that was there in India. So, on the 8th of August 1940, the Viceroy of India at that time, Lord Linlithgow, he made a new offer, which is called the August offer. He put forward two main proposals. The first one was, after the war was over, a representative Indian body would set up to frame a constitution for India. And secondly, the immediate expansion of the Viceroy's Executive Council by appointing a number of representative Indians. So, the first one was, once the war ends, we will let you set up your own body to frame a constitution for the country. And secondly, he expanded his cabinet by, by adding a number of representative Indians in it. Any doubts? Yeah, the second one is basically like, the Viceroy's cabinet that we studied last time, right? The Executive Council, his cabinet. So he offered that, he would appoint a number of representative Indians to represent Indians. He would, expand his cabinet, give more, add more berths inside of it. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Did you not see? It's not coming now. Check once again. You're not able to see it still? This one, do one thing. Pin me, you know, what? You can see now? Hello? Athar? I stopped screen sharing now. Wait, I'll start again, okay? Tell me if you can see now. You still can't see. You have your book with you, no? So, this is the second page of the chapter, which is page number 187. Yes, 187. Okay. Yeah, yeah, 1 second. Let me see if I can share it on my phone or something. But no, wait, I'll do it on this one. Phone won't come clearly. Right, okay. No, no worries, I'll do it. Yep. Can you see now? Alright, cool. So the next one was we were doing is the August offer. So any doubt? Let's see why the Congress rejected it. Alright. So the Congress immediately rejected the offer because there was no time limit as per to when the constitution making body was set up. There was a loophole in it. So they said anytime after the war he would set up allow a representative Indian body to set up a frame of constitution. So there's no time limit within which after the war when the body should be made. So the British would keep on dragging it for how long they wanted. Um, and and also on the issue of the expansion of his executive council, the number of people to be selected and all that, there was no agreement that could be put forward. So any doubts in this? All right, I'll move on then. The next one is the individual satyagraha of 1940. Since the war aims of the British were not clear, the Congress could not cooperate with them in the war effort. It neither wanted to launch a mass movement nor to give an impression that it was doing nothing. So for now, it launched an individual civil disobedience campaign. It was done as a moral protest than to obstruct the war effort. Satyagrahis were to proclaim, it is wrong to help the British effort with men or money. And Vinoba Bhave was selected to be the first Satyagrahi. He was arrested in October of 1940 and was followed by many other esteemed congressmen like Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, Rajaji Rajagopalachari, and Maulana Azad. All right. And by the end of April 1941, at least 22,000 people were jailed across the country. So, any doubts in this? The Congress didn't want to remain neutral. It did not want to oppose the war effort. It also didn't want to, give an impression that it was simply sitting. So it launched an individual campaign known as the individual civil disobedience. This was done as a moral protest against the British, but it didn't want to obstruct the war effort. All right. And for this, the first satyagrahi, like the man who take charge, it was Vinoba Bhave was the one who was, selected, and he went on to become Gandhi's spiritual heir. So that's a fact. Anyway, so shall we move on? Any doubts? All right, cool. So the next one is the Cripps mission of 1942. So this is the main part of this chapter. So first one is, why did Sir Stanford Cripps come to India? So on the 7th of December 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, an American naval base in the Hawaii Island. So Japan's entry into the war on the side of Germany and Italy was a cause of great worry for Britain, US, and China. Because throughout the start of the 20th century, Japan was growing in power, and during this time, after it had bombed, it kept on overrunning Southeast Asian countries. So Britain, France, America had their own colonies in Southeast Asia: Indonesia, Philippines, Burma. All these colonies, Japan one after one was easily capturing them and throwing out these countries. And they were getting worried because the war had come now to the border of India, because if you know about it, Burma is shares borders with India, right? So the war had reached the borders of India, and India was the crown jewel in the British Empire. So the efficient defense of India needed the fullest cooperation of the people of the country, because they didn't want to lose India. The British Prime Minister at the time, Winston Churchill, he was not showing any eagerness to reach any agreement with the Indian leaders, because you know that's what he is written down. He was unashamedly an imperialist to believe that India should forever remain in the British yoke. Although a defender of freedom at home, he was an upholder of oppression and exploitation abroad. So he believed in supremacy of the British and all. He did not want to reach an agreement with Indian leaders if one were below him. However, the US president now put pressure on him, saying, "You have to do this now, or we will lose up." The result was that Sir Stanford Cripps was a member of the British War Cabinet. So Churchill in the UK had set up his own War Cabinet to help in the crisis. So a member of the War Cabinet, Sir Stanford Cripps, he was sent to India to help solve the Indian problem, and he reached Delhi in March of 1942. All right. Any doubts regarding what I just said? All right. So we'll move on to the Cripps proposal. So the proposal which Mr. Cripps brought may be underlined as follows. The first one is, after the war was over, India would be given the same status as other dominions like Canada and Australia. So it would be independent, but it would still come under the British Commonwealth. Like the head of state would still be the Queen of England. And secondly, immediately after the war, a constituent assembly would be set up. An independent government where the princely states would be free to choose whether to join the Indian Union or to stay out. Third one is, the British government would accept the constitution so framed, subject to the condition that any province or provinces which did not accept the new constitution, they could frame a constitution of their own. They singly or together would be accorded the same status as the Indian Union had. And so basically under this, the British said that, we will accept whatever Indian constitution is framed on the condition that if a province or multiple provinces do not accept this constitution, they can frame their own constitution, which, together will, which, that constitution will also be given the same, rights and status as the one of the Indian Union. So this was a proposal which were sure to lead to a partition of India. The next point is, the Constituent Assembly would conclude a treaty with the British government. This treaty would cover all matters arising out of complete transfer of responsibility from the British to Indian hands. Besides other matters, They would guarantee the protection of racial and religious minorities in India. This treaty would guarantee the protection of these things. All right. And the final one is until the new constitution was framed, the government desired effective participation of Indian leaders in the Viceroy's Executive Council. Only the defense of India would remain under the control of the British government. So, any doubts? Yeah, yeah, sure, no worries. The fourth one is the Constituent Assembly. That is, the assembly which was drafting the constitution and, was governing India in the interim government. It would conclude a treaty with the British. All right. This treaty, what would be under it? This treaty would cover all matters arising out of the complete transfer of responsibility from British to Indian hands. All right. So, do you get this, or do you want me to explain it? All right. So basically, any matter which arises, which comes out of during the transfer, any issue that arises, this treaty would cover it and help solve it. Besides that, this would also guarantee the protection of racial and religious minorities in India. This treaty. All right. Yeah, and the fifth one is until the new constitution was framed, the government desired effective participation of Indian leaders in the Viceroy's Executive Council. So until the new constitution was framed, the Indian leaders who they mentioned that would be part of the Viceroy's Executive Council or cabinet, they would effectively participate. And only the defense of India, that is the armed forces, would remain under the control of the British government till the constitution was ratified and passed. All right. Any doubts now? All right, so I'll continue. The next one is the rejection of the cripps proposal. So these proposals seem to satisfy both the Congress and the Muslim League. And Sir Stafford Cripps declared that immediately after the war, a constituent assembly would be set up. He said his proposals meant complete self-determination and self-government for India. And the reason he said this, because these declarations were meant to meet the demand of the Congress. The provision for staying out of the Indian Union represented a concession to the Muslim League. Like, because they realized, okay, we can have our own province wherein, we can stay out of the we can stay out of the Indian, what do you call, we can stay out of the Indian Union, which because they believed that the Congress would dominate it. Even then, the Congress and the Muslim League, even though they had so many advantages, the Congress and the Muslim League both rejected the proposals. And we are going to discuss that in detail after a while, all right, in the next part of the chapter. Can we continue? All right. So the Quit India movement. What were the reasons that led to the passing of the Quit India resolution? So what the first one was the rejection of the Cripps proposal. So why was it rejected? First one, the Cripps did not bring with him the promise of independence in the near future. Because the Constituent Assembly to frame India's constitution was to be set up after the war. No time period was given. Secondly, Cripps proposed that any province or provinces which did not accept the new constitution could frame a constitution of their own. Such proposals could naturally divide India into a number of independent states, which the Congress was completely against. And third, the people of the princely states had not been given the right to elect their representatives in the proposed constitution making body. The representatives were to be selected by the rulers. This was a negotiation of the principle of democracy. So, in the third one, the members of the Constituent Assembly would not be elected by Indians. The British would decide who can be part of the assembly and they would let. So, the British could accordingly put whoever they wanted. And this was, against the principles of democracy. Fourthly, until a new constitution was framed, the government desired full participation of Indian leaders in the Viceroy's Executive Council. But the problem about this proposal was that the Viceroy would retain, full control over matters like war and defense, as it was mentioned earlier. In fact, in war times, defense, because during the times of war, defense covers almost the whole of the administration. The Congress wanted a true national government, with a viceroy acting only as a constitutional head and all the subjects, including defense, under the control of the government. All right. Any doubts regarding the reasons of the passing of the Quit India? I mean, sorry. Any doubts regarding failure of Cripps mission? Yeah, 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 yeah. You want me to explain it again? All right. So the third point is that people of the princely states, they had not been given the right to elect their representatives to the proposed constitution making body. So think of it like this: in the constitution making body, the peoples over there were selected by the Britishers, not by Indians. Imagine if we have a parliament and the British says we will decide who will be your representatives. Would that be fair? Yeah, because Indians were not allowed to elect who do we want in the constitution body. The British only would place whoever they wanted. That was the issue that we had. All right, shall I continue? All right. So the Congress wanted a sorry. In next one, Mahatma Gandhi was very very upset because of the virtual partition of India, under which the Cripps proposals involved. He therefore urged the Congress Working Committee to reject Cripps' proposals because he felt that all these proposals would lead to a partition of India. So next, let's move on to the attitude or view of the Muslim League and other parties. The Muslim League, also rejected the proposal because it felt that the prospect 1942. So Cripps came to India in 1942 and he said kept these proposals. So he was a representative of the British War Cabinet in India. He came out of jail in 1940 something. But yeah, in from jail also he could talk. No? When was he put in jail? I think somewhere later on. Yeah. So anyway, any other doubts? All right. So the Muslim League also rejected the proposals because they believed that the prospect of achieving Pakistan was bleak. Because they wanted a separate state for Muslims known as Pakistan, and they believed that these proposals would not help bring around that. It demanded a definite pronouncement in favor of partition. So they wanted a definite proposal which would partition India effectively. Second, and also, the Hindus Mahasabha at that time rejected any proposal which involved partition of India in any shape or form. They were against partition. The proposals were also rejected by the depressed classes, the Dalits, the Sikhs, the Anglo-Indians, the Indian Christians, and leaders of working class who were demanding sufficient measures to safeguard their interests because they were against it because they did not believe it, safeguarded their interests. The failure of the Cripps mission plunged the country in anger and resentment. The Congress could no longer remain inactive at this point. It had to give a suitable reply to the British, which was called Quit India, which is the next thing we will study. All right. So there are only 2 minutes left in this meeting. Will you join back? I'll end the meeting. I'll end the meeting and you join back. Okay. All right. Cool. Fine. Bye, man. Join back. Okay.